Here's your Forbes Daily Briefing for Saturday, May 11th. Today on Forbes, Guyana touts itself as capitalist paradise for more than just big oil. In just 8 years since the first discovery of oil in the Atlantic waters offshore Guyana, ExxonMobil, with partners Hess Corp and the China National Offshore Oil Company, have sunk more than $50 billion to drill 100 wells and install a maze of pipes and valves on the seafloor. The money also has been used to anchor 3 giant vessels to slurp up crude oil and pump it, in 1 million barrel batches, into supertankers for export to the world. Already this development of the area, called the Stabroek Field, is yielding 600,000 barrels per day. That output is set to more than double by the end of 2027, with 3 more phases planned. They'll keep going from there, with expectations that by 2030, Guyana could be exporting 2 million barrels per day, on par with Kuwait. At the annual Offshore Technology Conference in Houston on Wednesday, Exxon's Guyana president, Alastair Routledge, marveled, quote, "With the trajectory we are on, within this decade, Guyana will become the second largest producer of oil in South America, second only to Brazil." Routledge's enthusiasm was amplified by Guyana's Chief Investment Officer, Peter Ramsaroop. During a panel discussion, he said, quote, "If you're in the oil business and you're not in Guyana, you're missing out. This is the last time you will see such a development in the world." That's both because there's so few of these so-called elephant fields left to find, and because fossil fuels are supposed to be on their way out. Ramsaroop said Guyana rejects any such anti-fossil fuel admonitions, saying, quote, "Enviros say don't take the oil up. It's against the new rules. The developed world has all these decades to make themselves wealthy, and you're going to tell us not to take the oil up and keep ourselves poor? Our president says hell no." He's referring, of course, to outspoken President Mohammed Irfan Ali, elected in 2020. Ramsaroop said, quote, "His measure of success is the prosperity of the Guyanese. We're going to spend oil money as a checkbook." Guyana is already building 10 American-style hospitals and has funded 30,000 scholarships. Capitalists have caught on. A dozen hotels are under construction in the capital, Georgetown, including a $350 million luxury resort backed by Qatari money. Guyana's GDP grew 60% in 2022 and 30% last year. Deodat Indar, Minister of Public Works, said, quote, "It might look chaotic and it might look like overheating to some economists, but it is what is happening." So, what's the catch? Indar said, quote, "There's a monkey on our back." He's referring to neighboring Venezuela, which last year declared its intent to claim a third of Guyana's land, the Essequibo region, by force if necessary. Indar said it's just an illegitimate claim, quote, "designed to upset our momentum." He explained that national borders were demarcated by treaty in 1899 and settled further after Guyana gained independence from the UK in 1966. As a member of the UN, CARICOM, and the British Commonwealth, Guyana puts on a brave face despite its negligible military. Indar said, quote, "We have friends." The country is safe enough for ExxonMobil anyway, and for Chevron, which is angling to acquire Hess Corp for $50 billion, mostly for its Guyana stakes. Another consortium of Petronas, Total Energies, and Qatar Petroleum is finalizing contracts and keen to start its own offshore exploratory drilling. Routledge says Exxon is engineering the oil fields for maximum long-term extraction of every drop of the 11 billion barrels discovered so far. By the time the first 6 phases are complete, they'll have 250 wells and 200 miles of flow lines installed on the seafloor. Indar says that investors shouldn't wait until conditions are perfect to exploit opportunities. He says, quote, "The opportunity to find gaps in developed markets is difficult, but in developing countries the gaps are there. We want to make sure we fill those gaps now." Ramsaroop adds, quote, "If I was an investor, I would look at developing the ag industry. That means pineapples, coconuts, pumpkin, corn, soy, coffee, fish, and shrimp. But to be sure, oil will remain the biggest game in Guyana. Already, Exxon says it's tapping 1,700 domestic suppliers. It's common for countries with emerging oil industries to require oil companies to employ certain amounts of locally sourced materials and labor. Guyana doesn't want this to become onerous. Richard Rambaran, an economist and director at the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce, says, quote, "We are not doing local content in a punitive way, but in a way that will foster private enterprise." For full coverage, check out Christopher Hellman's piece on forbes.com. This is Kieran Meadows from Forbes. Thanks for tuning in.